Time now for sports on 104.7 The Cave. Here's Ned Reynolds.
Mike, the intern, Ned Reynolds in the studio. It's Monday, and the Chiefs lost in Cincinnati yesterday. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, you're not going to win them all. Records show that's going to happen. I thought the Chiefs didn't play quite as well as they could have. Now, why that the case? Cincinnati's a pretty good football team, folks, and they also had a raucous crowd in back of them. But then the Chiefs have raucous crowds in back of them up at Arrowhead. So, everything works out. Kansas City could have won. There was a big play, but not one that was totally a game maker in terms of the fumble or the strip, I should say, from Travis Kelce. But over and above that, Kansas City did not play their capabilities. Patrick Mahomes had a very pedestrian day, only completed 16 passes, 16 of 27, 223 yards, one touchdown. That is not a Mahomes performance. It wasn't so much that he was pressured in the backfield. He did have some hurries, but over and above that, he just couldn't find his receivers on a regular basis. And Joe Burrow did carve them up. I thought Burrow had a terrific day, 25 of 31, 286 yards, 2 touchdowns. But even more than that, it was the running of Samaje Perine that made a very big difference for the Bengals. Here, Joe Mixon, his one-time Oklahoma teammate, couldn't play because of injuries, so Perine comes in there and has over 106 yards and rushing. A big, big difference in that ball game. But Kansas City just didn't play as well as they could have, and yet that game could have gone either way. It was one of those contests, two very good football teams. I think the Chiefs still have a marked circumstance in which they could advance as the number 1 seed. Now, keep in mind, Kansas City won't be playing the toughest of all competition coming up here in the next couple of weeks. Denver twice, the Houston Texans, Seattle Seahawks, and the Las Vegas Raiders all to play. They are not the toughest hombres in the market. So there's a chance that Kansas City could sneak up and get that number 1 seed back.
And it's definitely possible. The Dolphins lost yesterday, so that's a good thing, but the Bills didn't. So it's going to be an interesting race to the finish. We'll see what happened. Thought some of the penalties were a little ticky-tacky yesterday in Cincinnati, but you can't blame it on that. And you're right, they just didn't. There was just something that was missing, like the spark, the fire. I don't know. I listened to probably almost the first half, and then watched the second half, and synced up to our broadcast. Of course, it just felt. I for a while I thought it was just me because I was tired because I drove to Nashville and back. But then I was like, you know what? Maybe they're tired.
You could almost see it coming because they didn't play as well as they could have against the Los Angeles Rams the week before. The game before that, Kansas City kind of slogged through their effort. That's not meant as criticism. That's the way the games were. And they almost played like that against Bengals, but you can't against a good team. And the Bengals with a very good... I'll tell you, Burrow is an outstanding quarterback. The way he engineered his team and the way they ran their offense, I thought was pretty doggone good. Still, Kansas City had their chances in it. It's just one of those things that happens. I don't look for it to happen again. I think the Chiefs will be more than ready for the Broncos next week.
I hope you're ready. I hope you're right, and I hope they are ready. But yeah, it's not a good feeling to wake up Monday with an L. But you know what? They're sitting pretty right now in the AFC.
It is only their 3rd of the year. Come on.
I know. And so we got to talk about that K-State Wildcat game, TCU, Big 12 championship. I got a chance to listen to it all the way to Nashville, and man, what a great game.
Most unusual ending to that game, but it turns out that there's a reason why it was. Texas Christian made a great comeback. Kansas State had that game won, put away now with a big Christmas bow around it, and let it get away. And here come the Texas Christian Horned Frogs back. TCU is a fine football team. K-State is a fine football team. We're going to find out how really good Kansas State is in the Sugar Bowl game.
Yes, we will.
They've got Bama coming up, and hey, folks, I don't care what kind of a record Bama had. They're pretty fair. Anyway, fact of the matter remains that Kansas State had the game wrapped up and let TCU get back into it and force an overtime. So with a 4th and less than 1 to go in the overtime, why not kick a field goal and create a possibility of a tie and who knows, maybe a win? They didn't. TCU went for the touchdown. Kansas State stuffed them at the line of scrimmage. Great defensive play. Then K-State comes back. All they do is kick a field goal, and that's what they worked for, and that's what they did, and got a 3-point win out of that ball game. Okay, why did TCU not go for a field goal? A sure thing at that point. Well, I think the reason is that Sonny Dykes knew fully well that his team was going to stay in the top 4. And he didn't want to risk anything. And why not put a big exclamation point on it by getting a touchdown? Well, it's a gamble that didn't work out. But as it did turn out, TCU does get into the Final Four, and rightfully so. They're a very, very good football team. They retain third place. They were third to begin with, lose by a point to Kansas State in overtime, and retain third place. So how does that work? Well, you knew they were going to stay in there, but if you put them in fourth place, where they would have been, and put Ohio State in third, who does Ohio State play in the semifinals? Michigan. For the second time in 3 weeks, committee did not want that, didn't think it was wise, so they'll just flip-flop. It's the Final Four, doesn't make all that much of a difference except your opponent. So it will be Ohio State versus Georgia, and Michigan against Texas Christian in the semifinals coming up on New Year's Eve. I think it's pretty good, Mike, and when you come down to that Final Four, you're going to get a legitimate national champion out of it. This will be the penultimate year for it, and have it Final Four again next year, and then it goes to 12.
That's what I'm talking about, and no more weird certain teams getting into the top 4 versus other arguments. It's done. The only thing that's really going to be definitely pushed to the forefront when they move to 12 is which programs get the money, because you're going to see probably about the 5, 6, or 7 in there every year. But you know what? At the same time, at least there won't be these arguments that are happening for the top 4, at least this year. Holiday Bowl games are not the only ones playing, the top 4 that being, we talked about Kansas State and Alabama, but what about Mizzou and Arkansas?
Missouri and Arkansas both get postseason bids. The Missouri Tigers go down to Tampa and play in the Gasparilla Bowl. That's what they call it. It's a big celebration of the Pirate legacy in Tampa Bay Buccaneers and so forth. Well, they have this big holiday celebration during Christmas. It celebrates the legacy of the Pirates. And Gasparilla, or Gasparilla, if you take a look at it and anglicize it, was a mythical pirate back in the 1700s, 1600s, and it's his legacy, or alleged legacy, that's the whole gist of the celebration. Anyway, Missouri will play in that bowl game at Raymond James Stadium. Their opponent will be Wake Forest. No slouch. Wake Forest is pretty good, folks. That'll be a nice little challenge for the Tigers. Arkansas goes to the Liberty Bowl in Memphis, and who do they get? How about this one? KU. They get the Jayhawks to play. That will be a nice little football game, believe me. These are good bowl matchups this year.
I really believe so, too, and it's been a great college football season, really has been. I think it's kind of nice to see some new teams up at the top. I mean, you got some of the teams that are usually there, but kind of a changing of the guard, or at least some making a case for themselves. Last but not least, kind of a significant day in college sports today, isn't it?
I think you'll see the coaches and the athletic directors. You won't see the media nor the general public going to the internet because they don't have access to it. Only the coaches and ADs and college officials do. This is the first day. This is a new ruling that the NCAA put in back in August. As far as the transfer portal is concerned, there are 2 windows of operation, 2 windows of time in which you can declare for the transfer portal. Beginning today is one of them. It goes until January 18th. The second one will be May the 1st through May the 15th. Prior to that, in between, absolutely not. You can't go to the transfer portal. But those windows you can, and I think you'll see a lot of official jumping of the ship, so to speak, today by a lot of players, maybe some of whom will be local. We'll wait and see, but this is the first of it. I think it's 48 days, if I'm not mistaken, whatever it is, from December 5th to January 18th, whatever that time period is. This is time that's projected toward football, although any sport can be involved in this. It'll be mostly football players. And interesting to see now who makes that decision. Prior to this, you've heard about Mike Holmes jumping to the transfer portal. It's only been rumor because they can officially do it starting today.
Well, if I go anywhere near the transfer portal, please be the first to let me know, Ned. The only place I'm transferring is to here tomorrow when we talk more sports. I'll see you then.